let's get into it. Now, last week we covered Nongshim Cup, the restart of the Nongshim Cup, not the restart, but the second stage of the Nongshim Cup, where we have Kang Dongyun taking on Shibano, and Shibano again showed that he's not really made for the Nongshim Cup again, maybe.
Bit harsh, but yes, Kang Dongyun did beat Shibano.
Yeah, and then now after Shibano lost, it's China's turn to present forward a player, and China put forward a bit. It's not unexpected. They put forward Jiaxi, which is the person you see pictured here, and Jiaxi plays Kang Dongyun, and dare I say, this game will go down in history as one of the more famous games.
Mate, every Nongshim Cup seems to have surprises,
Yeah.
and yeah, this is again something that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, and this is really quite strange. So this is the game that I'm showing you here. Tojashi is black and Kang Dongyun is white. Now, whatever they did at the beginning of the game doesn't really matter. But they kind of just got into a bunch of fights, and basically what happens is towards the end of the game, most of the commentator was saying how Tojashi is basically losing by a lot. And now we'll fast forward to the part where they started fighting a Ko. Now I have to say, Tojashi didn't really play bad. Okay, so he actually played quite well. But what's ended up happening is that at this point, Kang played this move to threaten this black group. I think this move in and of itself it's okay, but I think Kang kind of failed to notice an RG, which is that this white group over here, it's got really tight and liberty. So, and I guess the right move is what Tor played, which is this one, which is the key point in the shape. So you can see now this white group is next thing is going to be Atari, and then black's going to live. So white has no choice but to turn, and then Tor played here, and then Kang played this move, which is very tricky apparently. And I think even some of the pros got this part of the go wrong, got this part of the variation wrong. So Zhou Ruiyang, he's obviously one of the strongest players from China in the past. He's 9 Dan, international major winner. His first instinct was that black should play somewhere around here, the idea being that if white extends, then he can just cleanly capture these stones, right? But and then very soon he realized that white can actually resist over here, and the idea is that you cannot cut anymore because of this snapback. So he was like, okay, so he kind of wonders what white should do. But what's actually very interesting is that AI was suggesting playing here, which confused the hell out of a lot of pros, because they were saying, well, this doesn't seem to work because obviously white can just connect, and when white play here, white can actually like run away. It actually like for example things like this, white can just run away. So actually white it's actually white it doesn't get sealed in. I think maybe something like yeah. So basically this clamp doesn't really work. So the pros were a bit confused, but apparently black can play in such a way that it kind of threatens these stones, and just give up these stones and just treat these as kind of sente moves to help the life and death situation of this black group. So eventually the pros realized that AI was kind of suggesting that it's not trying to capture this white stone, but really to do it in such a way that it can threaten these 3 stones and help with the life and death in this black group. So that was actually very interesting. I don't know, it can be quite instructive for humans to kind of think about moves that doesn't necessarily capture but kind of help in by attacking some other group. But anyway, whatever AI suggestion or the other pro suggestion, Tor didn't play that move, and I think a lot of people consider this a mistake, because that can't allow white to just get out. And I think this is how Tor got into a little bit of a trouble at the end, because when white takes, now this dragon is not fully alive, and this dragon is also not fully alive. So now Tor ended up running 2 dragons, and I think by this time Tor is already in Bayomi. So I guess whatever. So they keep playing, but Tor managed to kind of save this 1 dragon. So now these stones are cleanly captured. There's no way for white to escape this after adding this move. But this dragon down here is in deep trouble. And this is really where the real story begins. So they keep playing. Okay, so this black dragon got cut off. And according to a lot of the pros, this black dragon can only live by a code, which is this one, which is a very, very tough code to win. And basically, most of them just said that black doesn't have enough code threats, so it's only a matter of time before black resigns. But anyway, Tor keep on fighting his code. I guess you don't just give up. Now, at this point, something very interesting happens. Now, at this point, there's actually a lot of ways for whites to play to try and capture this group, but or at least a couple of ways. That white chose this way. And after white played this, even though white technically only has 1 eye, black cannot kill this white group, because imagine if black at this point takes this one, white can just throw in. When I play this one, black can take. So basically in this case, white is already alive. Okay, but setting up things like this, this is actually how the whole thing became interesting, because I think even though black can take this and then white can throw in, this kind of sets up almost like an infinite amount of code threats for black, if you can think about it like that.
Yeah, code threat factory.
Yeah, Vulture factory, infinite. Now, at this point, most commentators were saying, well, black's gonna lose, because notice this dragon here only has 1 eye. So they thought, well, this black group's gonna die. But Tor played a very curious move at this point, which is taking this 1 stone, which was very strange, because people were thinking, well, taking this 1 stone doesn't give you another eye either. This is a false eye, obviously. So are you just going to die in Gote? But actually, Tor is actually playing. He's already planning something, which was quite extraordinary. So they keep playing, and at this point, they kind of set up this infinite code, and they keep playing Yosei. And now, if this black group is dead, there's no point playing this Yosei, because it's just black is losing by this so much. So why are they playing this Yosei? And now let's just go to the end of the game. Basically, at the end of the game, what's happened is that basically Tor is basically saying that, well, this group is not dead, even. And if you think about it, that's actually really interesting, because to kill this group, either you have to take so say black plays elsewhere, white has to take, right? But when white takes, black can take, so therefore white has to take this one and black can take back. Okay, but if you say, well, what if white starts on the other side? Okay, alright, it's kind of Atari, and then black takes, black can take back. So no matter which side you begin, black can always use this infinite code set factory to take things back. So if you just let this game play out in there's absolutely no way that white can capture black. So at this point, I believe Kang called the referee over, and that's when they started looking over the Korean rules. And at this point, almost everyone, including most of the Korean team, got involved into reading the rules. As you can see on the picture here, they kind of just started now analyzing the Korean rules to see if that group is dead or not. And Gaza, you know what the conclusion was?
What?
The conclusion was they couldn't say that this black group is dead according to Korean rules. And this is very, very interesting, because according to most pros that I've seen the commentary of, this black group would be considered dead under the Chinese rules, the Japanese rules, and the in-cup rules. But in this case, it looks like not under the Korean rules.
And that's the Nongshim Cup rules.
Yeah, which is the Nongshim Cup rules being used here. This is so remarkable. So what happened is, because they couldn't say that this group is dead under Korean rules. So, and looks like a quadruple ko. This game ended up being a draw. Believe it or not, even though according to any other rule set, Tojashi would have lost.
Yes. So I wanted to try and go over some of the other rule sets.
Yeah.
So I believe with the Japanese rule set,
right,
when there's a dispute on the life and death status of a group, they sort of have, what they do is they have a hypothetical play,
right,
where they actually, so they play the moves out to demonstrate how to kill the group.
right,
but those moves aren't actually part of the game record.
Right.
It's just a set of moves to show that the status of the group.
Right.
And I believe under Japanese rules, when you play in hypothetical play, when you take a ko,
Yep.
Your opponent can't recapture the ko without passing first.
Right.
So, and then in that case, the white can demonstrate that the black group
is dead.
The black dragon here is dead.
And that's because when white takes this ko, when white takes this ko, black has to pass, right?
Yes, and then white can take the ko again.
Take or fill in, either way it's the same. Take the ko again.
Right? Yeah, and then there's only one liberty left, so
then
so it's dead.
Yep. Okay, so that's Japanese.
And so yeah, in Japanese rules, the status of this black group is dead, and so obviously black dies.
Yep.
But yeah, under Korean rules, there's a good video by a Korean professional named Do Yoon Kyo.
Yep. By good, what do you mean by good? Good at what?
Well, she explains you know, how the Korean rules interpret this position. Like you explained it as well, but like yeah, it's exactly how you explained it, because like in actual play, white, you know, under the Korean rules, white cannot actually kill this group.
Yeah.
But we will link the video in the description anyway by Do Yoon Kyo.
And
in case you wanted a professional opinion.
Yeah. And is Do Yoon Kyo good at using AI?
Shut up. We're not going to talk about that.
All right. Okay.
Now, did you want to go over the Chinese interpretation?
Yes, I do. I think now I actually watched one of the Chinese videos, and the person actually went over the exact text of the Chinese rules, and you can find the Chinese rules by searching for Chinese rules in Chinese on the Baidu search engine. Now, I've turned on Google Translate to translate into English, but it doesn't look like it makes a lot of sense. But basically, essentially, the clause 20 of the Chinese rule, or article 20, whatever you want to call this, basically says the principle. It says the principle of the rule is that there cannot be, the board cannot have exactly the same shape everywhere. Like that's on principle, that cannot happen.
Right. So this is sort of a I believe in English they often call that the Superco rule.
Superco rule, yes, it's Superco rule because, but I mean in translating it as Superco rule, it basically says that it involves a co, but basically in this case it basically says you just cannot have the same shape, which technically it can be different, because I think it's possible for a situation where there's no co involved, but you can repeat the position, for example.
Yes, I believe that's
possible. Especially imagine taking two stones in a corner. You know, it's possible. So technically, code doesn't necessarily need to be involved. So I think a better translation would be something that just says the position cannot be repeated, no matter and if there's a word for that. Now, it's very curiously, it's got 3 subsequent clauses that kind of supplements the main principle. And the first one is saying, immediately withdrawal of a single robbery is prohibited. That's just bad translation. It just means the immediate take back of one stone is prohibited. That's just basically ko.
Right. Yeah, that's basic ko, and that rule is in the Japanese and the Korean rule set. Correct. That just means you have to play a ko threat or something like that.
Now the second rule, I think roughly translates to there cannot be. It also prohibits situations such as false life. So what's false life? Now let's look at the kifu again. Now false life is basically situations where, for example, I believe this black group is called a false life. It only has one eye and it's kind of relying on a code to stay alive. So under Chinese rule, this group will be considered in a condition of false life. So
the big black dragon.
Yes, a big black dragon. So this would, so therefore, at the end of the game, this will be considered dead. Just because also it goes back to the principle of no repeating position ever. And that's because if you think about this triple ko position, even though it's complicated, there can only be a finite number of possible shapes that can arise from this ko. So therefore, at some point, if you keep playing it out, one shape must be a repeat of the past. That's just a very simple application of the finite nature of the positions. So therefore, at some point, they must stop the repeat, and therefore white can in that sequence, when they're prohibited to make a move that repeats a previous shape, play a move that will ended up capturing black. So that's covered by the second rule. So therefore, under Chinese rule, it's very clear that the black would be considered dead at the end of the game, just due to this second clause over here. Now, the third clause is very interesting, but it doesn't apply in this situation, is that in principle, it says, in principle, rare situations such as triple ko and quadruple ko are also prohibited. But if you play, but it says you can adjust this rule according to the competition that you're playing in, which doesn't really make sense to me. What this means is that, or what it sounds like is that the person, depending on whatever the competition it is, you can kind of customize this rule. So I just don't think that makes a lot of sense. Like under what competition can you adjust the rule such that quadruple ko and triple ko is not counted as repeating a previous position? I do not know, but it's a very strange thing to be putting there. Now, mind you, this is Baidu, so this could be almost like the equivalent of a Chinese wiki. So it could be that someone just put this in there random, as per random, like just it's not even correct. But I don't know whatever the story is. But there's this third clause here that doesn't really make any sense. But whatever it is, according to Korean rules, this is a draw, and this is why this is so remarkable, because under any other rule set, this would have been a clear loss for black.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, so it's that number 19, that bottom left image that you see, that is the part of the Korean rules, and that's the Korean rules state this is a draw.
Right.
So the position is considered similar to this one.
Right.
Yeah. And but what is interesting is that even though it's part of the Korean rules, many of the Korean professionals did not know this.
Right.
They did not know what the result was. I believe one of the commentators, Song Tae-kon, who we've discussed before, I think he was quite convinced that black was lost.
Yeah.
Jiaxi was lost.
Yeah.
And was perhaps even a little bit confused as to why he was continuing to play on.
Yeah.
It seemed quite the case that Kang Dongyun himself wasn't sure of the rules. One professional who did seem to know immediately that this was a draw was Lee Hyun-wook. Yeah, who is he's quite a frequent commentator on Baduk TV. But he also often streams, when he's not commentating on Baduk TV, he will often live stream big pro games
right.
on his own YouTube channel. Yeah, he does that quite often, and he was live streaming this game.
Yep.
And yes, and he while he was live streaming, he knew the rule, and he knew that this game was a draw. So full credit to him, because it turned out he was not, he didn't seem to be in the majority of people who knew the rules. And I have to say, though, despite the fact that apparently only Korean rules give this position a draw, I say that I prefer this over at least the Japanese rules.
Right.
Because, like, in my opinion, if a group is dead, it should be able to be killed in normal play.
Right. Yeah.
And without the Superco rule, without the rule prohibiting the repetition of positions, this group can't be captured.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it, at best, white can force the game to be repeated indefinitely.
Yes.
Whether in Chinese rules, of course, there's the Superco rule that prevents continuous infinite repetition of moves.
Yeah.
And that's a different debate as to whether or not the Superco rule is a good rule.
Yeah.
But without the Superco rule, I do think that it's the correct, like it's the most intuitive and natural rule that if you can't kill it in the game, then it shouldn't be considered dead.
Yeah. And I would have to say that at least one pro is of the same opinion as you. So basically, that pro would be Wang Haoyang. He's one of the obviously, he's a very strong player from China. Now, what's interesting is that in Zhou Rui Yang's stream, he's of the opinion that, well, this black group is definitely dead, because he's kind of he correctly referenced the technical term in Chinese rules, which is it's a false life group. And Zhou Rui Yang also didn't know that under the Korean rules this would be a draw, but Wang Haoyang was saying that, well, in real play, you can't actually capture this group, so how can you say that I'm dead? So there's at least two camps, but I do believe that a Superco rule is probably for me the most intuitive way to address this, because you really don't want to just see repeats of the same position, really. And having a Superco rule also solves the co situation as well elegantly, but that's a totally different debate. As you said,